Gee, like you're somewhere different every time I'm checking up on you. Where were you in Europe? What was that for? Vacation or work?
Yeah, and so what we do is because spring and summer are so crazy, and because we have the cottage,
Hmm.
we live up there full time in the summer. Like I live and work up there, so and we hate the winter. So the idea that we've kind of strategized, myself and my wife, is January, February, March. We make sure we're gone for at least a week of every month for
Hmm.
vacation.
Hmm.
Then after that, we don't go on vacation again until maybe some football games in the fall or the winter.
Hmm.
We might do like a Lake Louise trip in November or December, but this is real. Like we get all our vacations out of the way early
Hmm.
because I'm going to be busy, buried my head in the computer for the next 8 months, basically doing all the deals, right?
Right.
So we just kind of the last couple of years is when we kind of got onto this because we were starting to I would take vacations in the summer and then I'd come back and it would be a nightmare. So the idea was we should probably plan it a little better, right? So
Cool. Hey, you going to the Grey Cup? It's in Hamilton.
no,
What?
I don't do CFL. I'm
It's
an
Grey
NFL
Cup.
guy. I
That's
know.
great. And it is local. It's just an Uber away for you.
I can't do it. I don't know what it is. I just can't. I can't get into three down football, man.
I'm not gonna watch the game.
Oh, well, then, you know what? I don't. Man, maybe I'm spoiled, but I'm like, I'd almost rather go to Pittsburgh or like Dallas and watch a football game than Hamilton. I'm like, I live in Hamilton. Why do I want to go in Hamilton, right? So.
That's hilarious. Trying to think, I was actually at a sports event just recently. I didn't watch the game at all. We were watching the Super Bowl in Miami. I didn't watch it at all.
That's the way it usually works, right? Super Bowl. I don't think a lot of people watch the games. They just it's party time, right?
Yeah, yeah, it's party time. That's a great cup for us. And again, it's in Hamilton.
Yeah.
Where's your cottage?
Butler.
Where's
You know,
that?
about like 35 minutes, 40 minutes north of Peterborough.
Okay, okay. It's just funny because in this real estate world, I'm used to all the time people telling me in a city in Ontario I've never heard before. And it's usually a rent to own deal or a wholesale deal. Someone's trying to sell somebody or something to sell me. And like, where's that?
Well, by the way, the ones that you don't hear of are usually the nice gems, right? Like, but yeah, no, Buckhorn's just a little tiny town, but it's in the Kawartha Lakes.
Yeah, yeah.
So when we were buying our cottage, we bought our cottage in 2013, and
Uh-huh.
we looked in Muskoka,
Hmm.
and then we looked in the Kawartha Lakes
Mhm.
area, and pretty much the same house that we could get in Kawartha
Hmm.
was double the price in Muskoka.
Damn.
So, and I wasn't in the same financial picture I am today as back in 2013. Not to
Mhm.
say it was a bad picture. It was just, if it was today, I'd probably buy in Muskoka. But because it was 2013, we felt like I would be better to go with a value play.
Right, right.
And it was my first cottage. But we ended up doing like massive work to this thing. Like we've done work almost every year, like
Mhm.
either renos or a full addition.
Hmm.
So we've kind of turned it into something that we can't leave now. Like it's
Right,
this
it's
is,
home.
This is our palace, right?
Yeah.
Like if I was to, I'll never get the money back from selling it that I put into it. We did like crazy
Good
stuff,
investment.
right? Like yeah, just spent way too much money. Everything custom, like stuff it's a good investment in 20 years, let's say.
Yeah, I joke and I'm kind of semi-serious. Like, whether or not people believe global warming is real or not, the world seems to be getting warmer. I think more and more Americans are going on vacation up here, where temperatures will be considered moderate for them, including
Well, it's
including
funny,
cottage
'cause
country.
right on our lake, on our road, actually, there's a couple cottages that are owned by people from the States. One
Mhm.
from Michigan, one from Connecticut.
Hmm.
Yeah, they come up here. I mean, we've got guys from Montreal that have cottages on our road, so it's crazy. They come from everywhere. But I figured out the Montreal couple, they're teachers, so they take the summer off. They boot out of Quebec, and they come and stay in Ontario for the summer.
Okay, okay. But the Americans, they fly up, or they're also there for the whole summer
I think
too.
they're Michigan and Connecticut, so they drive. Yeah, no, they end up. I could see their cars. They got the New York license plate on it and the Michigan license plate on it. So.
Okay. Selfish question.
Yeah.
Did you look at anything west?
No,
Cottage wise?
no,
No way. Okay.
no. You mean like
Like
where west?
like where do all those bikers go on Friday the 13th around those areas?
Oh shit. I know what you're talking. What is
Port
it?
something?
Yeah, I was. It's on the tip of my tongue. Yeah, because my mother-in-law likes that kind of scene. So I think they go. I think her and my father-in-law go up there for that thing. But yeah, no. I mean, truthfully,
Port
in my
Dover.
opinion,
Port Dover.
yeah, that's where it is. No, we kind of did like our own internal thing, and we kind of figured, like, we ranked it out and thought, if we were going to buy a cottage anywhere, if it's not going to be in Muskoka, we felt that the Lakes was probably the next best.
Okay.
So
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I had also gone to lots of, I had buddies that had cottages up there, so kind of knew the area. It's also, there was a couple things we looked at. The 407 was just starting to continue its journey to east, and we knew that it was going to connect with the 115. The 115 is the highway that gets to Peterborough, which gets to our cottage. So we kind of figured once the 407 is complete to the 115, it's only going to be basically a 2-hour drive door to door from Hamilton to our cottage, right? Maybe 2 hours and 10 minutes. So, and that was a big thing for us, was to not be on the 400, to go up to Muskoka. I mean, that's a brutal drive on a Friday and even coming home. Whereas the 407 gave us the ability to just, like, I could leave on a Friday, get on the 407, and I'm gone. Like, I'm right there. There's no traffic.
Oh, no kidding. Okay.
As long as you're willing to pay for it. I mean,
you can afford it, Dave.
Hey, the company pays it.
Actually, while we're talking about cottages, how does financing work for cottages?
Anyone that's got a mortgage for me for the secondary home program, it's the same. It's basically exactly the same. Now it's with cottages. I always tell everyone it's not an easy thing to get approved for, because you have to qualify for your own mortgage that you have on your house. Let's say that you live at, plus a mortgage on your cottage. So the real difficulty in getting a mortgage for a cottage is not anything outside of the fact that it's just harder to get approved for one, because the numbers are harder to get to work, right? Like, now if they've paid off their mortgage on their current home, getting a cottage is not going to be very hard, right? Because there is no other mortgage. I mean, when you picture a mortgage application, another mortgage payment is going to be the biggest debt on there. So that's, when you're buying a cottage, you're counting also your mortgage on your current home, which you have to have a substantial income on the file to be able to qualify to buy it. But as long as you do, there's really no special restrictions. I mean, technically, you can buy a cottage with as little as 5% down payment if it's a 4-season cottage, right? So, yeah, if it's not 4-season, then it goes into they categorize vacation property A, vacation property B. Vacation property A is a property that is 4-season, has access at all seasons, it has a maintained road, everything. Vacation property B is one that's not winterized and does not have full year access on a road. So I think vacation property A you can buy with as little as 5 or 10% down. Vacation property B, I believe you need 20% down. It is, but yeah, the only really other thing is most cottages are on they're not on municipal utilities, right? So they're on like on a well for the water and on septic for sewage. So you just have to get like a water test done to make sure that the bank is going to want you to get a water test done. But I mean, aside from that, that's really the only differences between what we're used to in the city and buying, a cottage.
Interesting. So one thing, we can't afford it now probably, but one thing Cherry and I were considering is we're not like, cottage folk like you are. I don't want all that work in terms of like the maintenance of the property. One idea, and I think it's been becoming more popular, especially among people that we know who have done well with their portfolios, is an urban cottage. So for example, Cherry and I are interested in a condo in that Pier 8 development once it's built, would that fall qualify under the same program? It would be. It would be all municipal utilities. Would that fall under the secondary home program?
Yep. Secondary home is technically something that you are wanting to purchase that is not going to be your owner occupied home, but it's a home that you will occupy at some point in the year. So I mean that the program is it's the main thing is why not everyone buys a cottage is because it's very tough to qualify with regards to income and debt service ratios. That's all.
Right.
That's the main hiccup with buying a cottage. Think of it like this: when we go buy a rental property, right? It's a little easier because you got rental income coming from the property being bought. When you buy a cottage, there's no rental income. So you need to have this but the file needs to have enough income on it to be able to service your own house plus a second house.
Right.
So basically look at it like as if you need to qualify for two houses. You need to qualify for your own and this other one at the same time.
Very cool. That's cool. And would that fall under category A then? If I'm buying in a new construction condo?
Yes, it got municipal services. It's got a road for all year round. So, I mean, it would qualify for vacation property A. Yeah, think of vacation property B as just very rural, but it's not four seasons. It's a cottage that would get closed down, you know what I mean, in the winter because there's probably not a road access. There's tons of cottages that you can't get to in the winter normally, right? Those are ones like island cottages. Like you've seen those.
Hardcore example.
Those are vacation property B all day long because there is no road access to them, right?
So Dave, so going back into what triggered the reason why we have in this podcast was I said to you because we had dinner. What month is it now? Oh my god! I think we had dinner in January, and we hadn't seen you in a while. And you've lost how much have you lost? How many pounds you lost?
I probably put on 5 pounds in Europe, but I got up to 255 last year, and then had a heart attack, and I'm down to like 190, 195. I'm probably 195 today after getting back from a 2-week trip from Europe where I've been going really hard on the cardio and the eating right for almost a full year. So I kind of use this as my reward. So I was eating foods I normally will never eat now. I was eating schnitzels. I was eating
nice.
French fries. That's a big thing out in Europe. They love their French fries. So I know I've come back 5 pounds extra, but I've made a conscious effort to quickly get that off. And the idea is I'd like to be down to 175 by the end of the year. So we'll see.
How tall are you?
I'm 5'6", so I at 255 pounds, I was very round.
Are you sharing how old you are? How old you were when you had the heart attack? You're still 39?
If you ever hear of people having heart attacks at 39, wait, hold on, am I 39? No, I'm 40. I'm 40. I had the heart attack at 39. I turned 40 January 31st.
So. Happy belated birthday.
Thank you.
You almost didn't see it.
40. That's the good news, right?
You made it to 40. So, what got you to 255? 255 pounds.
Yeah, no, so I don't know if you remember, the whole way I know Nick Karadza is through, we were bodybuilding in our late teens, early 20s. So I did a lot of bodybuilding there.
Do you remember what you weighed then?
Yeah, I think the highest I got up to then was 235, but it was a very different look.
Right. You were a block of muscle.
A lot of muscle and big heavy weights, that whole meathead thing.
Wow, that's enormous.
It was a fairly lean 235. I'm 5'6" and I had like 18-inch arms, so it looked weird. I guess it looked cool at that age, but it was. You look at it now, you'd say that's probably not a great look.
How much were you eating a day? Do you remember?
Oh,
like calorie wise, or
it's all chicken, rice, no salads. Like, bodybuilders don't eat greens. At least back then, what you thought of that as a wasted calorie. It was pretty much just get as much protein and complex carbs as you could for your next day's workout, and so that your muscles can grow. And that was it. But then I got into the mortgage business when I was like 21, 22. So I had started to fade out of bodybuilding. Ended up picking it up again when I was like 28. I kind of started getting out of shape. So I got back into bodybuilding, got back in shape, and then got married. And that was the kicker. I got married when I was 30, and then I just let it all go. And it was just an absolute crash because you're used to bodybuilding diet, which is very strict, and so I think from 30 to 39, I pretty much was just eating any bad food. I would eat it, candy, chocolate. I was just, I'm a glutton. So, I mean, I was eating everything I could see. I loved it. Just doing everything. I was up to, and the main thing is no activity because I was working so much. So, no activity combined with eating terribly, high stress, job. I think I pulled about 400 all-nighters in about 10 years, just trying to stay up with work. Just absolutely horrendous. So at the time, February of last year, I was probably about 225 pounds. My wife and I went to Europe. I came back and I got pneumonia from some kids that were sick in the plane. I knew it. Literally, just almost within hours of me getting off the plane, I knew I was sick. It ended up being really bad pneumonia. And so I took that as an opportunity to quit smoking. I had smoked cigarettes, which is another horrible thing. So I quit smoking February 26th or 23rd. And literally within 5 weeks, I had put on 30 pounds from quitting smoking and just eating. And anyone that's quit smoking knows you put on a lot of weight because you replace the smoking and putting stuff to your mouth with food. Uh-huh. So I had got up to 255 pounds. And then April 1st, Easter Sunday, last year, I'm sitting there. I have turkey dinner. I go downstairs in my basement. I crack a Red Bull. I get ready to play some video games. And all of a sudden, I got this really weird, intense pain. But it was weird because it was on the right center of my chest, and your heart's on your left, or at least that's what you think, right? So I got this really intense pain that felt like probably the worst heartburn you've ever had. Mm-hmm. So I sat there, and you're 39 years old, and you've got a pain on the right center of your chest. You're not really thinking heart attack right away. So I'm sitting there for a good half an hour. Some Tums, some Zantac for heartburn relief. Nothing. Getting worse. So I remember, and it was weird. It was so odd, but I started eventually to figure out, okay, this feels a little more serious. And I remember I was so fat at 255 pounds, and I'm in my basement in a Hamilton house where I live. In the basement, they're not big openings to get into. We actually finished our basement. It was an unfinished. So I remember the thought process in my mind was, if it's something very serious and I have to get an ambulance to come and get me, they're not going to be able to get me out of this basement. So instinctively, I knew to go upstairs and just sit upstairs. So my wife was watching TV. I go and I sit down on the other couch. She says, "What are you doing up here?" I said, "I don't know. I got this crazy pain in my right." And she said, "Well, you want to go to the hospital?" I said, "No, I don't know what it is. I just want to be up here in case it's so." I started doing all these weird things. Like I went outside in the front because it was April 1st, so the air's a little chill, and I was starting to get really hot and sweaty. And I walked outside the front, just trying to get some air. And I remember it wasn't helping. So for some reason, your mind is doing weird things. So I come inside and I go to the backyard because I thought maybe that air was different and that would help me. That didn't help. So then I went in the living room. I was lying on my back on the floor, and I was just doing all these things to try to get in a position where it would go away. and it wasn't going away. It was getting worse, and I was even starting to get like my shoulders were starting to hurt. My neck was starting to feel like swollen, and now an hour's gone by, and I said I should probably Google this. So I went on the computer.
I'm not going to the hospital. Let's Google this.
Yeah, exactly. My wife's like, we're going to the hospital. I'm like, not yet. So I Googled indigestion versus heart attack. That's what I Googled. And a big article came up, and it was talking about indigestion, GERTS, GERTS. And it was saying, what's the difference between GERTS and a heart attack? And I'm reading it, and the whole time I'm reading it, it's sounding like bad indigestion until I got to the end of the article, and it says, if you have shoulder pain or neck pain, you must go to the hospital. So right then and there, when I read that, I say to my wife, we got to go, because my shoulders were starting to feel, and it was weird. It wasn't, the pain was as if I had worked out with weights for 5 days in a row on my shoulders, and then I'm now feeling the sort of, it was very odd because I did not clearly work out. I was a fat guy at 255 pounds, and, I was not working out at all. So right away I thought, okay, we got to get to the hospital. But we still didn't know it was a heart attack in a weird way, like you're in denial, because we just jumped in my wife's truck. We drove to St. Joseph's Hospital in Hamilton. We even parked. It's not like we went to the emergency. We parked on the street and paid for the meter. And we just kind of moseyed on into the hospital. And then I took my ticket. Luckily, I was the next in line. They called me. I give the nurse or the lady who brings the input lady. I give her my information. A nurse comes. She takes my blood pressure. And I remember I said to her when she was done, I said, what is it? Because I do understand blood pressure numbers and what's good and what's bad. And that's when she said, you're 210/110. And I said, oh boy, that's bad. Like, that's the problem, right? So, but then a weird thing happened. It was really, it's an intense situation as you're going through it. But then she says, okay, go wait in the waiting room.
Oh, okay.
I'm thinking, if I'm having a heart attack, why would they put me in the waiting room? But so I go into the waiting room with my wife. My wife says, I got to go buy a soft drink, a Coke or whatever. I said, no problem. I sit down. Literally the second my wife walks out of the room, two nurses come flying out, open through a door. Mr. Butler, come with us. They throw me into a room. They start putting all these heart things, these things all over my chest. They're spraying nitrous in my they say, open up your mouth. And they start spraying all this stuff under my tongue, which was nitrous to try to open up the vessels. Some doctor guy comes in. I'm so-and-so, the, emergency guy, whatever. I said, what do you think's happening, man? He says, it's not what I think's happening. He says, you're having a heart attack. And so that was kind of the realization that things weren't good. And then within a minute or two, it felt like two guys showed up with a big yellow gurney. They loaded me onto the gurney, and all of a sudden I was in the back of an ambulance. 5 minutes later, I'm being wheeled out from the back of the ambulance onto an operating table where they did an angiogram, and I had an 80 to 90% blockage in my right main ventricle, and I had 100% blockage in a small artery on the right lower part of my heart. And so they put a stent in, which is it's a metal thing that opens up your artery where it's been clogged. And then they wheel you off to a recovery room where I happened to be in a room with 3 other people that had just had heart attacks, except they were probably 70, 80 years old, and I was 39. So, you do a lot of reflection when you're in a situation like that. I did it all to myself. It is what it is, man. All you can do is react to it, and you either get out of that hospital and you do the same things that got you in that situation, or you make the difference in your life you need to. So, at that point, I eat as clean as I can, save for my Europe trip, of course. But every day I have the same thing. I wake up, I have an egg white omelet with chicken and carrots and spinach and arugula, and for lunch, I have some low-sodium chili that my wife makes me. My other meal is like a half of a pita, with chicken and very low sodium. Like anyone that's had a heart attack knows, they tell you have to go low on sodium. So I don't. There's no salts, no nothing. I can't even have good condiments. I have to put yellow mustard on everything, and can't. I don't eat a lot of red meat anymore. Just as healthy as possible. So I mean, and then my last meal of the day is usually some fruit. I do about an hour and a half of cardio a day, about 45 minutes, a fast walk on my treadmill, and then I run for another half an hour, 45 minutes at about, it's a jog, it's not a run. And that's pretty much how I got my weight down. I don't do any weights, no weightlifting, not for any other reason other than an hour and a half of cardio is a lot. And
oh yeah, that's a lot.
I don't need more muscle. I've still got muscle from when I was bodybuilding. Not that I care to have it, but I just felt like it's time. I need to try to at least lean myself out. I mean, you know, you've met people in my family. My dad's a big guy. My brother's a big guy. I come from a background of probably gluttons that don't mind eating whatever they want. So I'm never going to have that lean physique, but, you know, I'm really I just care about health now and living. When you're in a recovery room with 3 other people in their 70s and 80s that have had heart attacks, you keep that vision in your mind for a long time. And so I just don't want to, you know, I feel like it would be ridiculous for me to have worked like this, gone crazy, doing this, building my career, building my business, becoming financially stable, and successful, and then dying at 39, 40 years old. I feel like I can already picture people at my funeral saying, I wish, it's too bad he's dead. He didn't get to live his real life. He worked his whole life. So, you know, that changed my perspective as well. I mean, I'm definitely looking to retire very early. This job is a great job. Being a mortgage broker it's got a lot of negatives. The one major positive is if you do it well, you can make money like an athlete would, a professional athlete. So, you know, but the pitfalls are ridiculous. I mean, like I said, 400 at minimum 400 all-nighters in the last 10 years. That's a horrible on your body. I mean, it's like at least 30, 40 a year, you know, almost 2 or 3 a month, you know, and I don't want to live like that anymore. I did it. It got me that result of sitting in an operating, you know, on an operating table, getting my heart work done. So, yeah, everything changes at that point, man. I mean, my whole outlook on life changed to an extent.
What would you do differently, Dave?
Nothing. Because I did it, and then I mean, in a weird way, I wouldn't change it because the heart attack was what was needed to get me to look at a different way of life. My type of personality, which is extreme, is not going to make a change on its own. I'm pretty self-aware of what my pros and cons are. Not to say I'm some guru and I understand my whole being and whatever and all that crap. I mean, I'm not astute to not understanding what I was doing, and I knew what I was doing. I think the difference is, if you want to know the truth, is that my dad is 62, 63 years old. He's 360 pounds.
Ooh, that's big.
He's got perfect cholesterol and perfect blood pressure. So he's got those crazy Irish genes where they just keep going and going. So I had always, and my brother as well, we had always just thought, hey, if Dad's going to make it to his 60s, we're good, you know. And the reality was, when I was in the recovery at the hospital and my mom had come to see me, and that's when she told me that her whole family is riddled with heart disease. All her aunts, uncles, sisters, brothers had heart attacks in their 50s. So if you do the math and you look at the life that I was living, compared to what they were, I was right on track at 39. I mean, that extra 10 years, if I lived a normal life, I would have been having a heart attack anyways, likely. So, it's hereditary. It's what I found out.
Yeah.
It's something that's hereditary. All you can do is limit your risk factors, but I accept it. You cannot choose your genes. Yes, you can choose how to deal with the risk factors. I did not. I lived a very focused life on business and enjoying and gluttony. But I wouldn't change a thing, because if I change a thing, do I have some of the things I have? And people are going to say, well, that's crazy. You die, it's over. Again, my personality is extreme. I need big things to happen for me to make changes. That's generally how it works for me. And, listen, it's weird because, you're doing all this work. I'm running this company. It's very successful. We win awards doing this stuff, and it's really easy to get caught up in that and forget about everything else, because you think, well, hey, I'm doing great in life. Like I've got money, I've got nice houses, I've got nice cars. Everything's going the way I wanted it to go, but yet you don't realize the things that you're not doing. And it's very easy to get caught in that trap and that mindset. So, to answer your question, what would I have done differently? If I could go back and do it over again, I would obviously make tweaks to my eating and keeping up with activity. But how do I go back and change the fact that I started smoking at 19, 20 years old? How do I go back and change the fact that I started in a business at 21, 22 years old, and I developed, work habits where I was working 15, 16 hours a day? Again, my clients were so happy with me. Everyone else was so happy with me. It was easy for me to overlook those other bad things and just go, well, I'm doing great. I'm doing awesome. Everyone's happy. Everyone's happy with what I'm doing. I'm happy with where I'm at. You know what I mean? And to be quite honest, Erwin, if I didn't have the heart attack, I would be 280 pounds right now. I'd be on the verge of a major heart attack that would kill me. You know what I mean? But I can admit that to you. I would not have changed a thing. Nothing. Zero.
Crazy.
And that's the listeners and your people that are watching are going to think this guy's a madman. I'm just being honest with you. I don't have a crystal ball to go back and change things, and
right.
I try not to even think like that. I just think, well, what am I going to do now?
What are you going to do now? Can you be back to 100%? Like, what does the future look like?
As far as I'm concerned, I'm 100% now. I have my goal to continually lose weight. Just keep doing all the things that would lead to a healthy cardiovascular and cardiac life.
Yeah.
And just, I'm very aware of the fact now that this runs in my family, and that clearly I got a lot more of my mom's genes, which actually makes sense because I'm 5'6", my mom's short, my dad's 6'2", my brother's like 6 foot. So if you were to look at my family, you'd say, well, he's probably closer to the mom, or as far as genes go, and my brother's probably closer to my dad. So my brother's probably in the good situation where he's probably got those hardcore Irish genes that, he'll be able to go a long time. And I got my mom's, and that it is what it is. It's no one's fault. It's just, that's life. You can't change these things, right? But right. I'm just continuing on. Every day, I have my Fitbit on. I got my health app on my phone. I track everything every day, and then I try to do more. So if one week I did 80 kilometers of activity, the next week I want to do 80 more than 80. That's all I do. And then when you fall off the rails, like I did in Europe, eating these things, you come home and you snap back in and you go back to your routine. So, we flew back Saturday night. I was on the treadmill Saturday night before I went to bed. I was even running. I went and paid €30 to go to a frickin' 1-day pass at a gym out in Amsterdam, and I went on the treadmill there, and if anyone's been to Europe, you do a lot of walking, so I was getting a lot of steps in. But bad food. You probably drink a bit more alcohol on a trip like that than you would. So, it's just being able to shut that off and get back to your routine. So, in a weird way, I'm thankful that I don't have any more vacations, because those fall off the rails. Now I've got a solid 8 months where, I can just really stick hardcore to it, like I did last year. I mean, we don't go on vacation after April. So last year it was almost very easy for me to try to get back into shape, and because we didn't go anywhere. So it was just monotony, 8 months, of eating healthy, doing cardio. But yeah, I mean, I got a lot more to go, man. I mean, I got one of these fat faces, regardless of whether I'm in shape or not. So I got to keep losing weight no matter what. And I'm a short, stocky guy. So, I think it's a lifelong thing I'll be doing, just to try to look like a guy like you. You know what I mean? So I won't get there.
I fast though. I lost my chubby cheeks by fasting.
You're gonna have to teach me some of that stuff. Like I need to get your tricks, because clearly I'm limited.
Yeah, you just gotta book an appointment with Dr. Cowan. I'll have Dr. Cowan on the show soon. So
Tom loves him, by the way. Tom from
Rockstar,
right? All the Rockstar guys love Mr. Cowan.
It's like anything, it's all about results, right?
Yeah.
I'm 40.
He works with some UFC guys and
yeah. Max Holloway. Holloway. All right.
It was funny. I was saying to Tom the other day, I was like, when we were talking, he was talking to me with Dr. Cohen. I said, now I know why Max Holloway always says how much he likes Toronto.
Yeah.
Because doctor's here.
Yeah. No, and he's a Raptors fan too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And Toronto fans like him too. Like, were you at the fight? You were at the fight too. Yeah. The fans were chanting him. Like, I didn't know he was that popular in Toronto.
He's, Max is an easy guy to like, though. Hawaiian guy, tough as nails.
Yeah.
Always puts on a good fight.
Yeah. Polite. Humble.
He's a crowd pleaser, right?
Mm-hmm.
So he's either getting knocked out or he's knocking someone out, and that's, in a barbaric way, that's what we pay to see. The worst thing is going to those things and seeing those 3-round snooze fests where the guys lay on top of the guy, right?
Yeah.
Like
or a 5-round snooze fest.
A wrestle snore fest, right? So.
Yeah. Now I wanted to ask you about these new what Trudeau and Morneau announced in the budget. Have you looked at it at all? We're getting free money from CMHC.
So you're gonna hate me on this.
Uh-oh.
I saw the stuff coming through while I was in Europe.
Yeah.
Got back on Saturday night, and I've just been literally buried in my emails. I think we had 1,700 emails from being away for technically 7 business days. So I, believe it or not, have not even gone through everything.
That's okay. It's still early.
I know Dan at the team has gone through. I'm supposed to be talking to him Friday. We were going to have a meeting and go over everything. So I apologize if you'll have me back on, or have Dan on. We'll go through it. But truth, I haven't even read through it in detail, because I'm just trying to get caught up. Those 10-day vacations are the bad ones to be away for. So.
That's okay. I haven't read into detail either, because there wasn't detail available. Because there's no talk about repayment.
I'm coming into, I know this doesn't help the listeners, but I'm coming into the Rockstar office on Monday.
Good.
And I'm going to go over everything with Dan. Dan and I are Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We're going to go over everything and make sure we have everything laid out for all of you coaches and yourself and Cherry and everybody.
All right. That's okay, though. Like, it's way early. They're talking about September. They don't have details either. I don't know of any idea how they're going to plan on funding this, because they're going to have to pay.
I'm gonna read more in detail, but some of the stuff I heard, I was like, okay. I mean, I feel like they just could have easily fixed things by just changing some of the rules back to what they were. But
Yeah.
I think that they would then think of that as going backwards. So they want to try to make new stuff up, right? So
By giving us money?
Smart.
People criticize about the mortgage rule changes, but at the end of the day, they were trying to stop people from getting themselves into financial trouble.
Yeah.
Right. But we're gonna help people stay out of financial trouble by giving them money. Money we don't know where it's coming from.
The one thing I can tell you that I've noticed in my career in this industry is that the government is generally not. They don't. Their decisions don't appear like they're on the ground floor. Their decisions appear like they are in an office somewhere completely devoid of what's really going on.
Yeah.
Someone told them something or recommended something, and they go with it without really looking at, I'm sure it's more in depth than that, and they do a lot of analysis on it. But, you've been around this industry for a long time. I've been around this industry a long time. Remember back when they had 0 down and 40-year amortization?
Yeah, those are the days.
They created this mess, okay? When I started in the business back in the early 2000s, there was no such thing as a 30 or a 35 or a 40-year AM or 0 down or anything like that. So the reality is the government has created this mess, and now they're just trying to clean it up. Like I said, you remember a time where you could buy a house with 0 down on a 40-year amortization. You could refinance a house up to 95%. You could buy a rental property at 5% down payment as long as you were willing to pay CMHC like a 7% insurance premium. These are things that are only going to lead to the creation of a bubble, right? Doesn't make much sense, right? Yeah. So, these same people that are making the rules now and making these changes are the same people that did that. So, I kind of rest my case on that stuff.
Right. Now, Dave, you've been around a while too, and I was remembering when they announced their changes for the budget. Like you tell me, but I recall every time there was a mortgage rule change, the market just flew off the handle leading up to the change.
Yeah, well, this one's going to be a little different because this is where they're
stimulating it,
adding things. Yeah, normally when they take stuff away, they'll set a date, and then there's this mad dash to the finish line of trying to get in under the old rules. So I think this one will be a little bit different in the sense that you might, at the opposite reaction, you might have people waiting until the rules come into place. We'll see. I think the difference being is that they've got these changes, I think, coming in September 1st. The spring and summer market will be in full swing by then. And maybe it's strategic because the spring and summer market is generally always going to be hot in real estate, even in down years. Maybe they feel like it's something they need to introduce in the fall to keep the train going, if you will. So that there's no fall and winter lull. Who knows, though? To try to figure out the intentions of some of these government people is that's a job on its own.
Right. But from the investor standpoint, I'm thinking if I have a listing and I can hang on to it, I'm not going to list it till September.
Yeah. It's there's the normal course of action, as would be you wait and list it in April and May or in the summer when it's things are more attractive. There's more people. People are they're not stuck in their house all the time because it's minus 30. But yeah, there's definitely going to be a group of people that will look at some of these changes and say, I'm going to wait. And I don't know if they'd be wrong because think about it. If the spring and summer market is pretty good, drives the values up a bit, why not then capitalize on the new changes thinking maybe it'll drive the values up again more? So maybe you get that kind of double effect on the value of your home. the one thing I will say about this mortgage and real estate industry is that it's tough to predict, right? I mean, like any market, if we could pick the top and the bottoms, we'd all be billionaires, right? So,
right.
I think there's some people that will certainly strategize to see if they can use that to their benefit. I think that's the same, though, almost as people thinking they know when the top of the stock market is in. You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's I guess it's all relative to what your plan is.
Well, what are you seeing today in terms of rates? What's the going variable? What's the going fixed?
It's funny. The conversation I've been having a lot with clients is about the fixed and the variable being so close together now. If you can recall, which I know you do, but if some of our listeners, the reason why some people would choose a variable was because the rate itself was much more attractive than a fixed rate. There have been times where the variable rate compared to the fixed rate was a point and a half better, sometimes more. Right now, I'll give you a perfect example. Scotiabank on a variable, I want to say they're at 3.3. Scotiabank on a 5-year fix might be at 3.29 or 3.34 or 3.39 or something like that. That difference between those two is nothing. I mean, you actually have times where the fixed is better than the variable. That is a market that is not aligned. Okay, and what I mean by that is this will not last long. I don't know how, what kind of time frame you can put on it, but this is in reverse right now. You're not supposed to have a variable rate that's more expensive than a fixed. I think what consumers have been lucky on is that the bond yields have been going down quite a bit since January, and I believe that was unexpected. I think with the U.S. Fed at the end of last year signaling that they were looking at some rate increases this year, the Canadian government, as we know, then kind of piggybacks, and there was this outlook that rates would be continually raising, and we saw the fixed rates raising with the variable, and then all of a sudden in January we saw this shift where the bond yields started going down unexpectedly. I think that had a lot to do with the fact that the market was able to sense that the U.S. might not be raising rates, which was confirmed by the U.S. Fed just, I think, last week or the week before, that they are now dovish, that they are likely not raising rates very much. I mean, I think last year they had called for 4 increases this year, and now they're saying potentially 0. So I think that's what probably pushed the bond yields down. And now you have this weird situation where fixed rates have come down quite a bit and the variable rate has stayed the same because the variable rate is chosen by the Bank of Canada and directed by them. So Bank of Canada only meets 8 times a year, and I think that it'll be I would be shocked if the Bank of Canada reduces the prime rate. So I think we're going to have this situation in front of us for a little bit. But one thing people need to realize is that the fixed rates come from the bond market. The bond market moves very similar to the stock market. It's not something that's only changed 8 times a year like the Bank of Canada prime rate, which the variable is predicated on. So the variable rate can only move a certain amount of times per year, whereas the bond market can go up and down several times within a day. So I think, and if I'm a betting man, which I am, my guess is that we won't see this situation where the fixed and variable are close together for very long. Now, the time frame is tough to say. Again, that's like trying to choose when the stock market's going to reverse but we're in an unequal situation right now in the sense of the variable and the fixed rates are not supposed to be this close together. Certainly the fixed rate is not supposed to be better than the variable rate. So in terms of rates, we're seeing some pretty strong fixed rates in comparison to what the variable rate is. And so that's leading to a lot of consumers choosing the fixed rate. And I don't think they're wrong in that, because if you were to ask me what's likelier to happen over the next 2 to 3 or 4 years, I'd say it's more likely that the variable rate goes up then it goes down. I mean, I would love for the variable rate to go down. I'm a mortgage broker. I sell money. I would love for rates to be cheaper. I just don't believe that the Bank of Canada is going to reverse their course, at least not in the near future. So
not without something major happening.
Exactly. You need something very big for them to reverse course on that. So, right. How long does this last? Let's hope through the spring and summer market. But a lot of clients are looking at it and saying, listen, if I'm going to bet on something over the next 2 or 3 or 4 years, I'm going to bet that that the variable rate is going to keep going up at least. So then taking a fixed rate currently today that's lower than the variable, it would be considered a smart value proposition, right? So, there's not a lot of times you would take a variable right now on a long-term hold. Where most clients are going to take a variable rate today, especially investors, is when they're getting themselves into a short-term investment. If they're buying a property that they think is going to sell in 1 or 2 years, a variable rate is definitely an option to look at. And the reason simply is because the variable rate has the cheapest penalty to break the mortgage at 3 months interest. So,
and then what's the penalty for breaking a 5-year fixed?
So if you were to break a 5-year fixed, the penalty can be monstrous because there's either 3 months interest or interest rate differential, whichever is more. So if you're breaking a 5-year fixed in the first couple of years, it's more likely that the IRD, which is the interest rate differential penalty, will be higher, so the bank will charge you that. And you'll remember that, a couple of years ago, there were people having to pay $15,000, $20,000 penalties to break fixed mortgages. That's what you want to avoid. So anyone who would call me up and say, hey, I'm looking at buying a property, an investment property, or any property for that matter, and my first question is, how long do you plan to have it? I only plan to have it for 1 or 2 years or 3 years potentially. So right away, I would eliminate a 5-year fix as an option. I would look at a variable. I would look at maybe a shorter fixed term, 1 year, 2 year. And that's just because if I was the person buying the home, I wouldn't want to buy something, put myself into a 5-year term contract that I know I'm likely going to break early and I'm then going to have this heavy penalty. We're investors. That's not a smart investment move to do that. I mean, we want to keep as much money in our pocket and avoid the bank having it. The bank's rich enough. So the idea of minimizing your penalty is a smart move. And so that's why, we would do that. But yeah, I mean, right now, most people are taking the fixed rate if it's a long-term investment or it's an owner-occupied home or it's a cottage. Because they're banking on the fact that the variable rate is going to likely keep going up and that rates overall will likely keep going up. I mean, we have to remember we were just at the bottom, literally the bottom, in August of 2017, okay? That is the first time the government increased prime rate in like 7 years, okay? So the reality is you don't generally come off the bottom and then go back on the bottom. That's not usually how governments work, right? Once the bottom is in, now there's a reverse, and you start to go the other way. And then, at some point in, let's say, 5 years, when the rates are higher, the government then looks to reverse and bring it back down. I mean, I wish there was a good book to read that could kind of go through this, but I know a lot of your listeners and a lot of investors are understanding of the fact of how markets work. Markets go up and down, very much like real estate, very much like interest rates. These are up and down, and when you cannot stay down forever. That's the way it goes, and you can't stay up forever.
So I almost forgot to ask some questions I was supposed to ask you. So I have some questions. I put them out to the cyberspace to ask. Which lenders allow buying in a corporation name?
Okay, so today, if you want to buy in a corporation name, you can go to RBC, and I guess I'll minimize this to the major lenders that will lend on rental properties. Buying in a corporation name is going to be RBC, CIBC, I believe BMO, National Bank. I have to take a pass on because they didn't used to when they were in the mortgage broker channel, but they left the mortgage broker channel. And then the final two banks, TD and Scotia, this is a really weird thing, and it's one of the unequal situations of mortgage brokers compared to banks. Branches, comparative to mortgage brokers to branches. In the mortgage broker world, Scotia and TD will not allow you to buy in a corporation. However, I have been told by some of my investors that TD and Scotia at the branch level are able to do mortgages in a corporation name. Now, I hear that it's selective. That's definitely a for sure. It's something that, and this is the problem with branches, in my opinion, is that it's selective in how they do things. Whereas, at least in the mortgage broker channel, it should be transparent. What our lenders can do in the broker side is what our lenders can do. I mean, there is no changing, per deal, as it were. Whereas at the branch, it seems like it's a per deal basis, which is frustrating from a consumer standpoint, I can imagine. But to answer the question, RBC, CIBC, I believe, and BMO, and then National Bank is a big question mark, simply because they were in the broker channel and they left, and I don't keep tabs on National Bank, to be quite honest with you. They're not an aggressive lender, so I don't keep really much tabs on them at the moment. And Scotia and TD, if you're working with a broker, cannot do it, but at a branch, you may be able to.
Right.
Now, people would say, well, then why would I use a mortgage broker instead of a branch? It's a valid question. My answer to that is simply that we all have dealt with people at a branch before. We also, and that's not to put a horrible spin on that, but we also know that people at a branch don't generally last in the same position. So if you find a good one, then they're gone. You got to deal with someone else. So there's inconsistency there. Yeah. And I think investors on the whole, at least from my perspective, like consistency. So at least I would say that the broker channel appears to be more consistent in terms of the solutions and results and programs as opposed to the branches. Right. And I would like to think that mortgage brokers should be more educated and skilled than someone hired off the street at a branch, but I wouldn't want to say that completely without actually assessing the individual person.
This is a new question I haven't heard before. Is pension income considered T4 income for mortgages, or is pension income usable for qualifying purposes?
Yeah, the answer is yes. Pension income is 100% usable. Pension income is usually through a T4A. Although there would be some times for sure, like I guess a teacher's pension. I have to double check. I don't look at as many documents these days as I do underwriting, but yes, bottom line is pension income is usable. There's CPP pension, OAS pension. There is work pension, so people have work pensions where like teacher's pension, stuff like that. All pension income is usable, and it's 100% usable. So to answer the question, yes, pension income is always usable, and they will use the full amount.
Okay. And final financing question. A lot of people are buying and then renovating and then hoping to pull out money. What does the financing look like for that type of strategy?
Generally speaking, it's no different than refinancing any property. So you can always refinance a property up to 80% loan to value with a major bank as long as you qualify. I mean, that's the number one thing with mortgages with banks is you have to have the income and the GDS and TDS debt service ratios in line, and you have to have your credit score. But the reality is, if I buy a house tomorrow, I get a mortgage on it, I renovate it, it's now gone up in value, there's nothing stopping me as a mortgage broker from sending an appraiser to that house, getting the new appraised value, and as long as my client's application qualifies, I can now refinance up to 80% of the value of that house. So
right.
There's no restrictions on that. Now, a situation I just had today, a client bought a house, they renovated it, they turned it into a student rental. And he called me today and he said, I want to refinance it. I've done all these renovations to it. And I said, perfect, I'll get the application set up. And he said, oh, should I tell you that now it's a student rental? And I said, yes, you should tell me, because, and the reason why that caused a roadblock there was that there are only so many banks that will actually finance student rentals. There is a scarce number of banks that will finance student rentals. As you know, you are a leader in student rentals. There are many lenders that will not touch them. There are a few lenders that will. So in this gentleman's situation, we had the mortgage through Scotia. We were just going to go back to Scotia and keep his mortgage the same and add another mortgage component or a home equity line of credit to him for him to get the access to the equity. But because he had now changed it to a student rental,
right,
my problem becomes that Scotia will not finance student rentals. So in the end, I had to send his file over to RBC and CIBC, who are outside of the mortgage broker channel. But as you know, we work with Stephen Green from RBC and Scott Dillingham from CIBC. So we sent the file over to both of them. And the only negative to that is, and I wish the client had told me he planned on renovating it into a student rental, because I would never have put the property with Scotia to begin with had I known that. I would have actually sent him to RBC and CIBC, where I knew that they would eventually be able to fund a student rental, because then he wouldn't have a penalty. He could likely just add a mortgage component on top of the original mortgage component. So, that's a situation where that gentleman is going to have to pay a small 3-month interest penalty, but he will get a refinance approved through RBC and CIBC because he had a good application, and they will finance student rental.
Right. So it's probably good advice to investors to lay out their plan with someone like you so that you can strategize properly.
Yeah, I mean, a good mortgage broker should always be doing the right thing, as you know, there's good mortgage brokers, there's bad mortgage brokers. My thing I like to tell my clients is treat me like your lawyer. Tell me everything I need to know so that I can put a plan together. For the last probably 10 years, I don't look at myself as much of a mortgage broker anymore. I look at myself as a mortgage planner for investors. Investors need a plan. If you're an investor and you're planning on buying 10 properties and you're just going to go to any bank and try to go one at a time to get your mortgages, you are going to run into some roadblocks
real fast.
There is an art to maximizing an investor's portfolio. You need to be working with someone who understands the different restrictions that each and every bank has on rental programs and rental properties. The main factor is that there are limits to what each bank will do in terms of how many properties. Some will only allow you to have up to 5 properties in total, and then they say no. Some will allow you to have up to 10, but you can only have 5 mortgages of those 10 with that bank. Some say, we don't care how many mortgages or properties you have, you just can't have more than 5 with us. So if you're not putting together a plan as to which lender you're going to be using on property 1, property 2, property 3, all the way up to property 15 or more, you're going to hit stumbling blocks way before you had anticipated. So that, in my opinion, goes back to, I'm not a mortgage broker anymore. I mean, basically 100% of my clients are investors. I now plan. I don't, a mortgage broker is someone who is taking applications, figuring out if you're approved or not, and submitting your deal to the bank to get the best rate. A mortgage planner who works with investors is someone who knows his client is already approvable. He's an investor or she's an investor. They have a good application. Now I have to plan out how I'm going to get you to your goals. That's a lot different than just someone buying one property and they're done. So that's,
those are the easy ones.
My title. I should be mortgage planner now for investors. There should be some cool name for it, like strategic planner for real estate investors, but it's too long. So.
No, and for the listeners' benefit, I don't know many that do it like you do. Most mortgage people I know will usually only make recommendations on where they get paid. So it's rare where they'll recommend CIBC or RBC. It's usually they'll go straight to a B lender because they know they get paid.
Yes.
right?
Yeah, you're 100% right. I mean, that's going to always be a problem in my industry. Is that, and I think even in the real estate industry, that there is someone getting paid a finder's fee or a commission, and that is always going to, I would think that that's a lot of times could play a part in that person's decision on where they place the file. I also think that that's the reason why certain brokers are able to excel and certain brokers stay at the level they are at, because if you're in this business and you're focused on what you're making per deal, you're going to lose every day to a guy like me who doesn't care about the money.
Right.
I long ago realized that if I'm thinking about the money, I will lose, because if your focus is on the money that you're getting paid, then your focus is not on the task at hand. And if your focus is not on the task at hand, you are not going to do the best job for your client. So that's strictly put. If you're focusing on money and you're a mortgage broker, I'm going to beat you, because I don't think like that. It's just not. I come from a family that's done this for 40 years. I look at my days not as to how much money I'm going to make, but I look at my days, how am I going to get through the day of all these deals?
Yeah, you have my problems to deal with now.
Yes.
Try to get my 10th property. Question about legal basement, any sort of secondary suite. Let's just basements, because it's the most common example. Legal basement suite versus a non-legal basement suite. The income, the rent income, is it treated the same when qualifying for property?
You know what? It's crazy. I had this discussion actually with Dan. It was probably a couple months ago, because we had a couple files where they were basement suites, but they weren't quote unquote legal. The bank, the reality is, if there's a tenant in there and there's a lease in place, the banks will use it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Now there's some intricacies there. If you're buying a house, and so this is the intricacy. It's the explanation is, I should elaborate on it. If I buy a house today that I'm going to rent out the upstairs, and I believe that the basement is something I could rent out, but it's not separated at all. Mm-hmm. It's just like an in-law suite, let's say, as an example. When you're buying it, the banks will not use rental income for that basement. Okay, so let's make sure that's clear. Mm-hmm. However, if you were doing a refinance on that property, we will be sending an appraiser to that house to do an appraisal. If that house is fully rented, the top unit and the basement unit, the appraisal will note that, and the bank will use it. So there's like this disconnect in that if it's a purchase and it's not a legal unit, generally speaking, you're not supposed to be able to use that rental income from the basement unit. But if it's a refinance and it's not a legal unit, but it's rented out, the bank will use it because you're able to provide a lease. The appraiser is knowing that there is someone in the basement renting it out, and so then the banks will use it. It's an imperfect situation in terms of mortgage underwriting, but the good news is a lot of times people don't need that basement unit rental income to qualify when they're buying it. But it's always helpful to have when you're doing a refinance. And not only that, when that investor is going to go buy a different property, if the one that they bought and they've now put someone in the basement unit, I can use those rents on that property. You get what I'm saying? So that will actually help me for future properties that the investor is buying. So it's the answer is yes and no, but I think we've articulated how it works.
Super cool. Dave, we're way over time, so I want to say thank you for it. No, it's my fault.
You took up too much time on the heart attack, man.
It's a crazy ass story. I don't think I know anyone in the same situation as you. It's funny because I know one other guy in the office. He had shingles. I had shingles. Way too young. But your story just takes the cake.
I'll take that as a good and bad thing. That is not a story a 39-year-old should be sharing. However, if it was going to happen, it was going to happen to me.
That's crazy. Dave, where can folks follow up with you if they want to follow up?
I'm easily able to get a hold of. I'm an email guy, so I'm dave.butler@butlermortgages.com. Sadly enough, I mean, we have a corporate website which is butlermortgage.ca, but that website actually is more run by my father and my brother's side of the company. So generally speaking, phone number for our office to get in touch with us is 1-888-684-8326. And myself and Daniel Patton are the main agents here that work with our investors. And then, of course, email dave.butler@butlermortgages.com. We do more than just one. And that's Butler with one T.
Excellent, Dave. Anything you want to leave us with? I'll give you the last word.
No, the last word is thank you very much. You're doing a really good thing, Erwin. I just want to say it's been awesome working with you over all these years. I appreciate all the clients you sent me, and doing stuff like this. This is fun. I mean, I'm going to hang up this interview right now, and I'm going to end up having my head buried in files. So this takes a little monotony out of my day. So I will say thank you very much.